Hi, we are learning about solving quadratic equations today. Solving quadratic equations means you have to find the root of the equation. So we can do this by four methods, which is a squared minus b squared format. Second one is factoring. Third one is completing the square. And the fourth one is quadratic formula. The first one is in a squared minus b squared form, and this can be written in another way into a plus b times a minus b. You have to make sure that you know this formula well because you have to use this formula many times in the future. In fact, when you're solving any quadratic equation, you can put it into the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, which is a standard form. And in this case, a squared minus b squared, it will be only used when b in the standard form is 0. Also, you can have x in either a or b in the a squared minus b squared form. So when you plug in the x, it becomes something x squared. This form in middle school math will be only used when a and c are squared numbers in the standard form. So when you make this into a squared minus b squared format, you can just have integers in your final form. To solve an example problem, x squared minus 4, you can put it into standard form by putting 1 in front of x squared and 0 in front of x, and then writing negative 4. So when you make this into the form of a squared minus b squared, a squared becomes x squared and b squared becomes 4. So when you're to solve this, a becomes x and b becomes 2. In another example, for x squared and 36, you have to apply the rule a little bit and find the GCF first. So what would be the GCF in this case? It would be 4 because both terms are divisible by 4, which is the largest factor. So when you combine these into 4, then you have 4 times x squared minus 9. Then you can apply the rule of a squared minus b squared, and then you can make x squared minus 9 into a squared minus b squared format, and finally make it into a plus b times a minus b format. So when you do all the work like before, you can just refer to my writing in this case. You get the final answer of 4x plus 3, x minus 3. Secondly, you can use factoring to solve quadratic equations, which I already covered in the last video. So I'm just going to go over an example. So the first example is x squared plus 2x plus 1. And if you do all the work, it becomes x plus 1 squared. And similarly, x squared plus 4x plus 3, you can divide 3 into two factors, and the only factors in this case is 1 and 3. And then since 4 is a sum of 1 and 3, this equation can be written as equal to x plus 1 times x plus 3. And the third method can be a little bit confusing to some people who never learned about this one. It's completing the square, so basically you're putting the quadratic equation into the form of x minus a squared minus b equals 0. And it's important to keep in mind the standard form of quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So when you look at this example, x squared plus 4x minus 2 equals 0, you have to put the constant on the right side, so you have to add 2 to both sides. So the product becomes x squared plus 4x equals 2. And then you have to divide the coefficient in front of x, which is b in the standard form, into 2. So when you divide 4 into 2, then you get 2. And now it can be a little bit hard because the equation I wrote next is not related to the top equation. It's just a separate equation to remind you that x plus 2 squared is x squared plus 4x plus 4. And why did I use x plus 2? It's because I got 2 from 4 divided by 2. And now, when you look at the top equation, which is x squared plus 4x equals 2, you realize that x squared plus 4x needs 4 more to become x plus 2 squared. So you have to add 4 for both sides of the second equation from the top. When you do this, you get x plus 2 squared equals 6, and then when you put square root to both sides, you get x plus 2 equals root 6. And when you solve everything at last, you get x equals -2 plus root 6. Lastly, we're going to learn about how to solve quadratic equation using quadratic formula, and this can be the easiest because you just have to know the standard form of quadratic equations and you have to plug in the numbers into the formula. You have to make sure you remember the formula unless the teacher provides it for you, but you're going to use this formula a lot of times throughout your math learning. And to see an example, x squared plus 4x plus 8 equals 0. To make sure that you don't have any mistake, you can just label it a equals 1, b equals 4, and c equals 8. And what you have to do is just plug those numbers into the quadratic formula. And in this case, b is 4, so you have to put -4, and then plus minus blah blah blah, you just plug in. And when you calculate it, you get -4 plus minus root -16 all divided by 2. I think my example had a negative number in the root, so you don't have to worry about negative numbers appearing in your test or quiz in middle school because you're not going to have to learn about negative numbers in root. So we learned about how to solve quadratic equations through 4 ways. I hope this helps and stay safe everyone. Thank you!